You think you can threaten me? Do you know who my husband is? Linda Morrison's manicured finger pointed through the air like a weapon, her diamond ring catching the harsh Arizona sun. I stood there, on my own driveway, boots planted in gravel I had paid for, watching this stranger's face turn red. This is community access. It has been community access for decades. You just moved here. You do not make the rules. Behind her, the black Mercedes idled in a cloud of dust, its engine purring. My name is Marcus Webb. I am 42. And this 5-acre piece of Scottsdale desert was supposed to be my escape from exactly this kind of chaos. It started 3 weeks earlier, late September 2024, when I was still unpacking boxes in my new house off Pinnacle Peak Road. The property sat at the edge of the Desert Ridge Estates HOA, a gated community of Spanish tile homes where every cactus was permitted and every mailbox matched. My land was not part of their community, though they seemed to think otherwise. I had bought it specifically because it was outside the HOA. No rules about paint colors, no committees deciding if my truck was acceptable. Just me, the saguaros, and silence. Until her. The first time Linda Morrison crossed my property, I did not even see her, just heard the crunch of tires on my private drive at dawn. I stumbled outside with coffee to find fresh tracks cutting straight through the section I had been preparing for native grasses. She had driven right across it like it was a highway. By the time I threw on boots and jogged to the road, all I caught was the flash of her black Mercedes disappearing toward the subdivision entrance. I stood there, confused, more than angry, watching dust settle over crushed seedlings. 2 days later, it happened again. This time I was ready. I had set up a simple wildlife camera, the kind hikers use to catch javelinas, and it captured everything. Her Mercedes rolling through at 6 to 47 a.m., windows up, phone in hand, not even a glance toward the private property sign I had posted. When she came back that evening, I was waiting at the mouth of the drive. I waved her down. She stopped, window lowering just 4 inches. "Ma'am, this is private property," I said, keeping my voice level. "You cannot drive through here." She looked at me like I had asked her to solve a complex problem. "Relax. There is an easement. Always has been. Everyone uses this road." I shook my head. "Not according to my deed. This land has been private since 1981. You are trespassing." She laughed. Sharp, dismissive. "Then maybe you bought the wrong property." And she drove around me like I was not even there, tires spitting gravel against my shins. I went straight to my real estate attorney, Maria Gonzalez, with the deed and survey documents. She reviewed everything twice. "Marcus, there is no easement recorded. Not historical, not implied, nothing. If she is crossing, she is trespassing, plain and simple." I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I was right. Dread because I knew what being right against someone like her would cost me. Maria's voice softened. "Document everything. Dates, times, photos. Build a file. If this escalates, you will need it." I started that afternoon. Within a week, I had a pattern. Linda Morrison, vice president of the Desert Ridge Estates HOA, crossed my property twice daily, morning and evening, shaving nearly 10 minutes off her commute to the Scottsdale Quarter Shopping Center. My neighbor, an older man named Roy Chen, who had lived here 40 years, shook his head when I told him. "That woman thinks the world is her property with her name on it," he said. "She fined my daughter $300 for hanging Christmas lights 2 days early. She has got no shame and less sense." I tried reasoning with her one more time. I caught her stopped near my property line, talking on her phone. I approached slowly, hands visible, calm as Sunday morning. "Linda," I said, "you are damaging my land. You need to stop using this road." She glanced at me, annoyed, still talking into her Bluetooth. Finally, she muted the call. "Marcus, right? Look, this road has been open forever. My husband checked the records. You are making a problem where there is not one." I pulled out a printed copy of my deed. No easement, no right-of-way. Nothing. She smiled, the kind that does not reach the eyes. "Well, you can argue with the county if you want, but this is part of our community infrastructure. You will learn how things work around here." She drove off before I could respond, tires spitting gravel. I stood there watching dust swirl in the desert heat, thinking about how some people go through life never hearing the word no and meaning it. That night, I sent her a certified cease and desist letter through Maria. Linda signed for it on a Thursday. Friday morning, she drove through again, and this time, she honked. I sat on my porch that evening, staring at the torn-up dirt where native grasses should have been growing, and I made a decision. I was not going to yell. I was not going to escalate. But I was done being invisible. People think desert living makes you soft. Truth is, it just teaches you patience. Before all this, I did not know much about Desert Ridge Estates. I had driven past their entrance a few times, towering palms, a stone monument with gold letters, and security cameras. That was their world. Sculptured hedges, Spanish roof tiles, and monthly meetings about fountain maintenance. My world was different. Gravel driveway, open sky, a porch that creaked under monsoon winds. The kind of quiet you earn, not purchase. But Linda Morrison liked bending the world to her schedule. According to Roy, she had been HOA vice president for 4 years, enforcing rules like they were laws. She once fined a family for leaving their trash bins visible 15 minutes past collection time. Another neighbor got cited for planting bougainvillea in the wrong shade of pink. That is who I was dealing with, someone who had never been told no and believed it did not apply to her. I tried one last time before things got ugly. I caught her in the driveway one afternoon when she stopped to take a call. I walked up slow, hands visible, voice Tom. Linda, you cannot keep using this road. It is private. You are tearing up native plantings I paid for. She did not look at me at first, just kept talking into her earpiece. When she finally acknowledged me, she sighed like I had interrupted something critical. Marcus, she said, this road has always been open. My husband verified the property records years ago. I told her again, there is no easement on record, no right-of-way, nothing. She smiled that condescending smile people use when they think you are beneath them. You can take it up with the county if you want, but this is part of our community plan. You are just not used to how we do things here. I stared at her, trying to decide if she was lying or just convinced she was right. Did not matter. Either way, she was not stopping. When she drove off, her tires kicked rocks against my legs. I did not say anything. I just watched the dust trail vanish toward the subdivision and thought, there goes someone who has never faced a consequence in her life. That night, I pulled out my property folder, the thick one with the deed, survey maps, and title insurance. I spread everything on the kitchen table. Maria had been thorough. The documents were crystal clear. No easements, no shared access, nothing. I called her. Maria, what do you do when someone drives through your land daily, claims it is legal, and will not listen? She paused. You document everything, every pass, every date, and if she continues, we file. But Marcus, be patient. Do not let her pull you into something extreme. The next morning, I installed a second trail camera with a solar panel and motion sensors. That evening at 6:52 p.m., it caught her Mercedes gliding across my property. The next day, again, 3 times in 1 week. I sent her another letter polite, certified, with return receipt asking her to stop. Tracking showed she signed for it Thursday morning. Friday at sunrise, I heard her engine. I stepped onto the porch with coffee just in time to see her roll past, phone in one hand, the other waving like she owned the place. She was not ignoring my letter. She was mocking it. I set my cup down slowly, feeling that cold anger that does not make noise, just settles deep and stays. I decided then, if she wanted official consequences, she would get official consequences. That is when I contacted the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, not because I thought they would arrest her immediately, but because I wanted everything documented. And deep down, I knew this was just beginning. Because people like Linda do not stop until something forces them. The following week, I installed new signs along my driveway. Large aluminum panels, bright yellow backgrounds, bold red letters visible from a quarter mile. Private property, no through traffic. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I added smaller signs underneath. Smile, you are on camera. It felt absurd, like childproofing against a grown woman with a luxury car. But out here, documentation is everything. The law does not care how right you feel, it cares what you can prove. I photographed every sign with date stamps and GPS coordinates, sent copies to Maria, and emailed them to the sheriff's office. By Tuesday, the signs were crooked. By Wednesday, one was down. By Thursday, my trail camera caught the reason. Linda's Mercedes slowing just enough for her to reach out with what looked like a golf club and smack one sideways before speeding off. That video still makes my blood pressure spike. I showed it to Roy over coffee. He watched silently, then muttered, "She is either fearless or extreme. Probably both." He was not wrong. I tried staying calm. I really did. But by then, her daily route had become psychological warfare. Every morning, 6:45 sharp, the rumble of her tires echoed off my house. Every evening, just before sunset, she would roar back, honking twice like a victory lap. At first, the damage was cosmetic: tire ruts in the gravel, crushed desert plants, scattered rocks. Then, it started affecting my plans. I had been planting native wildflowers and grasses, milkweed for the monarchs, brittlebush, penstemon, trying to restore what decades of neglect had stripped away. Every time she tore through, she destroyed weeks of work. I would replant sections, only to find them flattened again days later. The frustration was not just about property damage. It was watching something you cared about being trampled by someone who did not care at all. I contacted the sheriff's office again, asked to speak with a deputy. That is when I met Deputy James Santos, young, sharp, one of the few who actually listened. He drove out, walked the property, reviewed my documentation, photos, videos, the signed cease and desist. He nodded often, frowned occasionally, then delivered the words I had been dreading. Mr. Webb, everything you are doing is correct, but technically this remains a civil matter unless I catch her in the act and she refuses to leave. Best I can do is talk to her, maybe give her a warning. I sighed. So she keeps trespassing until you happen to be here? Santos gave me a sympathetic look. I will file the report. Maybe a warning from law enforcement will slow her down. He kept his word, drove to Desert Ridge that afternoon. 2 hours later, he called. Marcus, I spoke with her. She claims you are harassing her. Says she has documentation proving an easement showed me copies of old subdivision maps. But I am no land surveyor. I said quietly. Those maps are fake, or not relevant, Santos agreed. Probably. But until a court rules otherwise, I cannot arrest her for trespassing if she claims good faith belief in access. My advice? Keep documenting. The stronger your file, the better your case. So I did. Every pass, every timestamp, every tire track through my restoration project. By then, it was not just trespassing, it was a campaign. She would accelerate near the house, honk once, and I swear she did it just to see if I would react. I did not. I just noted the time, saved the footage, and waited. Patience is not weakness, it is preparation, but patience has limits. And the morning I found 3 weeks of seedlings crushed into the dirt milkweed I had hand-planted for the butterflies, that limit started cracking. I stared at that tire-scarred patch of earth and made myself a promise. I was not going to touch a weapon. I was not going to chase her down or yell, but I was done letting her treat my land like a public highway. Next time she came through, something would change legally, permanently, and entirely on my terms. That morning changed everything. I stopped pretending this was a minor annoyance. It was deliberate, daily trespassing with real consequences. It was costing money, destroying months of work, and stealing the peace I had moved here for. So I did the boring, tedious work that actually wins: paperwork. I created a new section in my property folder labeled Incident Log. Each entry included cold facts: date, time, direction of travel, weather conditions, exact location of tire tracks. I described what the ground looked like, estimated damage to plantings, and took photographs from multiple angles. Everything backed up to 2 hard drives in cloud storage. Copies went to Maria the same day. Maria liked to say lawyers are historians with better documentation. She told me to treat every moment like evidence because evidence is the only language courts understand. Do not rely on anger, Marcus, she said. Rely on a timeline. So I built a timeline. I added a 3rd camera with wider coverage, installed motion sensors with timestamps, and purchased a GPS data logger. If that sounds technical, it is because I used to work in construction management. Tracking details is in my blood. I placed reflective markers where tire damage was worst. In the folder, I kept the scanned cease and desist she had signed for, plus receipts for destroyed plants and irrigation repairs. I documented every interaction with the sheriff's office, too. Deputy Santos would email brief summaries after visits. Date, time, findings. I forwarded them to Maria and filed the originals. There is something powerful about official language. It does not shout or sneer, it just records what happened. Roy wrote a short statement, too, maybe a paragraph, saying he had witnessed the Mercedes cross my property multiple times. He signed and dated it. I made him coffee and thanked him. Good neighbors make credible witnesses. There was a harder part, figuring out where to draw the line. People online say things you cannot unhear. Second time, flatten her tires. It is easy internet bravado. But That was not how I wanted this to end. My father taught me, you can be furious without being a felon. I repeated it like a mantra. Maria laid out options. We could file a civil lawsuit for trespass and damages. We could petition for an injunction. We could request a formal boundary survey. Each had timelines and costs. She warned me directly, if you do anything that could be construed as a trap, you risk criminal charges. Do not go there. She said it gently, but the message landed. She was my attorney. She did not want me in legal trouble, and she did not want my property tangled in someone else's lawsuit. She did, however, guide me toward one legal deterrent, devices law enforcement uses to disable vehicles safely. If you go this route, Maria said, do it with full transparency, everything documented, every warning posted clearly, full disclosure to the sheriff before deployment. You give notice. You involve law enforcement. You leave zero ambiguity. I ordered the equipment that day through a licensed vendor invoice, serial numbers, shipping confirmation to my address. I did not brag. I did not post about it. I spent the afternoon testing camera angles, verifying sign visibility at dawn, buying extra batteries and weatherproof housings. The goal was not to set a trap. It was to create a final, undeniable line of defense. On my legal checklist, the last items read like pre-surgery preparation, notify sheriff, post multiple warnings, prepare evidence kit, verify devices are non-lethal and compliant with local law. I called Deputy Santos and told him I had purchased deterrent equipment and planned to notify his office in writing before any deployment. His voice stayed steady. Do everything by the book, Marcus. We will inspect the signage and setup beforehand. If you document everything, you protect yourself. If you hide anything, you do not. There was quiet satisfaction in closing that folder. It felt less like escalation, more like armor. I was not preparing for war. I was preparing for accountability. That night I slept poorly, but with a clear conscience. The next morning before sunrise, I walked the property and checked camera angles again. The desert looked calm under a pale sky. The driveway stretched like a line through the sand. Somewhere beyond that line, someone believed she could keep walking over what I had built. I closed the folder and set it on the kitchen table beside the manila envelope labeled Incident Log. If the worst came, if a courtroom called my name, I would walk in with every fact organized and ready. Because I was not going to hurt anyone. I was not going to make a scene. I was going to do it with paperwork, with law enforcement notified, and with the kind of patience that had carried me from one career to the next. I woke before dawn that Tuesday with nervous focus I had not felt since my construction days. There is something about knowing you did the preparation work right, that clean satisfaction of a solid plan. I carried it like armor against the cold desert morning. First, I drove to a commercial sign supplier in Phoenix and picked up more signs, bigger ones this time. Heavy-duty aluminum? Reflective coating? The kind municipalities use for dangerous curves. I wanted anyone rolling down that driveway at dawn to have zero excuse for missing them. They read, plain and clear, private property. No through traffic, vehicle deterrent devices in use, tire damage will occur. All activity recorded. I placed them every 40 feet along the stretch she had been using, mounted on posts sunk deep enough that monsoon winds would not budge them. I photographed each post and logged GPS coordinates like a surveyor. It felt theatrical signs that direct. But this was about eliminating wiggle room. I did not want her or anyone claiming later they had not known. Next, I emailed Deputy Santos. Attachments included photos of the signs, timestamps, serial numbers of the deterrent equipment, and the vendor invoice proving legitimate purchase. The message was short and direct. I will be deploying vehicle deterrent devices on my private driveway within the next week. I invite you and the sheriff's office to inspect the signage and equipment prior to deployment. All documentation attached. His reply came quickly, the kind that reads like tacit approval. I will be there Friday morning. Bring everything. We will document it. I felt steadier after that. If law enforcement knew, if the paperwork was clear, someone else would ask the hard questions later when things got loud. Maria and I met in her office that afternoon. She is the kind of attorney who speaks softly but thinks like a prosecutor. We reviewed the folder, timeline, camera footage, Roy's statement, plant replacement receipts. She nodded, asked pointed questions, then finally said, "You have done your due diligence, Marcus. Keep the sheriff included. Post signs so obvious they are impossible to miss. And when, not if, you deploy anything, ensure it is fully documented and causes property damage only, never personal injury." I asked, "Can the sheriff turn on me if this goes sideways?" Maria said, "If you hide it, yes. If you document it, notify them, and use devices designed to disable vehicles without injuring occupants, you build a strong case that you acted reasonably to stop repeated trespass and property destruction," she emphasized. Reasonable. That is the legal foundation, not what feels satisfying, what stands up under oath. Friday morning, Deputy Santos and another deputy drove out. I had left all signs up and set out a table with copies of everything: the certified mail receipt, photos, the county parcel map showing my deed, an indexed list of camera files. Santos walked the line, squinted at the reflective paint in the morning sun, then looked at me. "They are impossible to miss," he said simply. We reviewed the deterrent equipment together. Specifications, manufacturer instructions, invoice. Santos examined the packaging, checked serial numbers, made notes. We discussed safety protocols, what to do if a vehicle became disabled in a dangerous position, how to handle a panicked driver, which tow services were authorized, emergency numbers to call. We talked about preserving evidence, leave devices in place, document everything, let deputies catalog if needed. There was no excitement in it, just practical business of harm reduction and documentation. I appreciated that about James. He would not cheer me on. He would make sure I could not be accused of anything illegal. He issued me a brief patrol record at the end, a note stating he had inspected signage and equipment and received my written notification. "This goes in the file," he told me. "If she returns and ignores the warnings, call us immediately. We will respond, document, and act." That was all I wanted. Witnesses, documentation, a record showing I had kept everything above board. I tested the equipment once carefully, with my old pickup in a controlled space to ensure it behaved as the manual promised. It disabled tires without causing the vehicle to fishtail or lurch suddenly, exactly as advertised. I recorded video of the test, labeled the files, added them to the evidence kit. The rest of the week blurred into small tasks: replacing markers animals had knocked over, checking camera batteries, mounting a backup camera for wider angles. Roy stopped by with coffee and surveyed everything with a rancher's practical approval. "You have covered every angle, Marcus," he said. "No gaps left now, no gaps to hide in." I agreed. There was strange comfort in being meticulous. It was not about revenge or triumph. It was about responsibility to my land, my work, my neighbors. If people were going to cross that line, they would do it knowing exactly what the consequences were. By Saturday night, everything was in place. Signs, cameras, equipment inspected and ready, a folder full of time-stamped evidence, and a patrol record from the sheriff's office. I locked the shed and sat on the porch with coffee. Someone once said, "Prepare like you expect to win. Work like you expect to lose." I do not know who said it, but it fit that night. I had prepared to win quietly, with proof, with law enforcement aware, with zero room for theatrics. Now all that remained was waiting to see if the signs and the law would do what I could not: make an entitled person stop. Because whether she backed down or rolled forward, the line had been drawn, and I had done it by the book. There is a strange calm before something you know will change your life. That Sunday night, the air was thick with it. The cicadas hummed in the darkness, and occasionally I would hear wind scrape across the metal shed roof. I could not sleep much. My mind kept running the checklist: cameras, signs, sheriff notified, equipment ready. Everything was in place, every detail covered. I had done my part. The rest was up to fate, or more accurately, up to Linda Morrison. When the alarm went off at 5:30, I was already awake. I brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint and sat at the kitchen table watching live camera feeds on my laptop. The world outside was still dark and soft, the saguaros casting long shadows. For a moment, it looked peaceful. I almost believed it might stay that way. At 6:15, the first vehicle rumbled past on the main road, Roy heading to the feed store. We waved. He slowed, rolled down his window, shouted across the distance, "Think she will show up today?" I smiled without humor. She has never missed a Monday. He nodded and drove on. Back inside, I checked the timestamp overlays. Every camera angle was perfect. One facing the entrance, another mid-driveway, one catching the open area where she always cut across. The sun was rising fast now, slanting gold across the shed's metal wall. My heart was steady, but tension coiled in my chest. 6:28, 6:35, 6:42. For a few seconds, I started wondering if maybe she had listened this time. Maybe Santos's visit or the massive signs had gotten through. Maybe she had finally realized the driveway was not hers to take. Then, at 6:47, the first glint appeared on the western camera, sunlight bouncing off chrome. There she was. The black Mercedes rolled over the rise, same speed as always. The camera zoom caught the shimmer of her gold-rimmed sunglasses. I could almost hear the engine before the microphone registered it, that steady purr of German engineering doing 40 down a gravel road. She passed the first sign without slowing. Then the second. Then the third, bright red letters reflecting in morning light. Warning, clear as day. Vehicle deterrent devices in use. She did not brake, did not hesitate. It was like she believed warnings were for other people. I felt my pulse quicken. The monitor showed her approaching the first deterrent strip set just beneath surface gravel, designed to flex upward and puncture tires safely. 10 yards. 5. Then the sound. Pop, pop. A second later, 2 more. Pop, pop. The front tires deflated instantly. The Mercedes lurched forward, nose dipping. She kept rolling, probably thinking she had hit debris. 5 seconds later, the rear tires met the same fate. Now the Mercedes was dragging on rims, slowing but still moving. I leaned closer to the screen, breath held. She had maybe 20 yards before the second set. When she hit it, the sound was sharper metal on metal, the shriek of grinding rims. The Mercedes jerked, shuddered, then rolled to a stop in the middle of the driveway. Dust swirled around it. I exhaled, realizing I had been holding my breath. My hands were steady. I did not feel triumph. Not really, just relief. Relief that it was over and that she was safe enough to climb out and face what she had done. For a long moment, the Mercedes sat idling, brake lights glowing red through dust. Then the door opened. Linda stepped out, moving stiffly, like she could not process what she was seeing. She walked around the vehicle, stared at flattened tires, then kicked one. The sound of her voice reached the microphone muffled, angry, high-pitched. I could not make out words, but I did not need to. I had seen that rage before. The rage of someone who had never been told no until the world itself enforced it. I picked up my phone and dialed. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, the dispatcher answered. This is Marcus Webb. Pinnacle Peak Road. I have a trespasser on my property. Vehicle disabled by posted deterrent devices. No injuries. Please send a deputy. The dispatcher took the information. Voice calm. We will dispatch someone immediately, Mr. Webb. I set the phone down and looked back at the monitors. Linda was pacing now, shouting into her phone, gesturing wildly. Dust drifted through early light behind her. That was the picture. Her, standing in the middle of my driveway, the Mercedes crippled behind her, and my warning signs gleaming like verdicts on either side. I saved all 3 camera feeds to the folder labeled Incident 6:47 a.m., backed them up twice, closed the laptop. Then I stepped outside. The air was cool, sharp, clean, and for the first time in weeks, the sound filling it was not the roar of her engine. It was silence. When I walked out of the house, morning sun had fully crested the mountains, spreading golden light across the desert. Linda's black Mercedes sat dead center on the gravel driveway, tilted slightly forward. 4 shredded tires collapsed into dust. You could smell hot rubber and metal, that acrid mix of friction and impact. She was pacing beside it, phone in hand, voice sharp enough to cut glass. I could not hear every word until I got closer, but I caught enough to know she was not calling the police. She was yelling at her husband. Completely destroyed. Yes, all 4. It is his fault. He did this. I told you we should have. Then she saw me walking toward her and cut the call short. Her eyes locked on me, bright with disbelief and rage. What the hell did you do to my car? She screamed. I stopped about 10 feet away, boots crunching in gravel. I kept my voice level. I warned you. Linda, 8 times in writing, with signs, certified mail, and sheriff's visits. You ignored all of them. She pointed at the driveway like it had attacked her. You tried to kill me. You set traps. That is illegal. You are going to jail for this. I raised my phone, started recording, and said calmly, This is my private property. You have been trespassing for weeks, despite repeated warnings. I notified law enforcement and posted clear signage that vehicle deterrent devices were in use. You chose to ignore those warnings. Her expression twisted, not fear, not guilt, just pure offense. Those signs are fake. You made them up. This is HOA access, and you know it. I gestured. Around us to the desert, the mountains, the wide sky. Linda, this is not part of your HOA. Never was. This driveway has been private since 1981. You have seen the deed." She folded her arms, shaking her head so hard her sunglasses nearly flew off. "You think you can just do this and get away with it? You have damaged my vehicle, a $95,000 Mercedes. You will pay for every cent." I smiled slightly, not from joy, but exhaustion. If I were you, I would save that speech for Deputy Santos. "He is on his way." That made her freeze for just a second. "You called the police?" I corrected. "I called your witnesses." That hit her. She turned pale, then flushed red. Her voice cracked. "You think this is over? My husband is the HOA president. You have no idea who you are dealing with." "I know exactly who I am dealing with," I said, still recording. "Someone who believes boundaries do not apply if she does not like them." For a moment, she did not answer. She just glared, breathing hard. Then, she did what entitled people do best. She tried flipping the story. She raised her own phone, started filming, spoke loudly as if addressing an audience. "I am being held hostage on my property by a dangerous man. He set spike traps to destroy my car. This is assault. Attempted murder." That almost made me laugh, but I kept my tone even. "My name is Marcus Webb. This is my land." Mrs. Morrison drove onto it without permission, despite multiple posted warnings. Her tires were damaged by deterrent devices clearly marked every 40 feet. "She is not injured. She is trespassing." Her phone wobbled. She was not expecting composure. She was expecting fear. "I am calling my lawyer," she hissed. "You should," I said. "You will want him here when the deputy arrives." For a few seconds, the only sounds were wind and the low ticking of her Mercedes engine cooling. Then, in the distance, I heard gravel crunching. Blue and red lights flashed at the far end of the road. Linda straightened her posture like an actress preparing for a scene. "Oh, thank God," she said loudly. "Officer! Officer! Over here!" Deputy Santos stepped out of the patrol car, hat low against glare, clipboard in hand. I had seen that look before. Steady, patient, firm. He scanned the scene once, twice, then looked at me. "Morning, Mr. Webb." "Morning, Deputy." Before I could continue, Linda rushed forward, words tumbling over themselves. "This man tried to kill me. He planted spikes on public property. Look what he did to my car." She gestured wildly toward the Mercedes, voice breaking. "He is insane. He has been harassing me for weeks." Santos listened without interrupting, pen barely moving. When Linda finally ran out of breath, Santos turned to me. "Mr. Webb?" I handed him the folder, marked Incident Reports and Evidence. Inside were printouts of certified letters, photos of signs, camera screenshots, the deed, and a copy of the patrol note Santos himself had written after inspecting the deterrent setup. Santos flipped through it calmly. "You kept everything." "Yes, sir. 3 camera angles recorded this morning's incident. All files are backed up and time-stamped." Linda let out a loud scoff. "That is all fabricated. He staged this. He probably edited those videos." Santos looked at her evenly. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have documentation proving you have legal right to use this driveway?" Linda blinked. "My lawyer does." "Do you have it with you?" Santos asked again. "I know, but..." "Then please stop talking," Santos said, voice firm. "You are trespassing on clearly marked private property, and your vehicle is disabled because you ignored those warnings. You will receive a citation for criminal trespass. The matter of vehicle damage is civil. You will need to arrange towing at your expense." Linda's mouth opened and closed like she could not find words. "You cannot cite me." "I am the victim," Santos wrote on his pad without looking up. "You are welcome to explain that to the judge." I stood quietly, arms folded, watching as truth finally caught up to her. Not vengeance, not victory, just the heavy quiet of consequences. Santos turned to me. "You want to press charges, Marcus?" I looked at the crushed wildflowers, the scarred driveway, the weeks of work destroyed. "Yes, sir," I said. "I do." The tow truck's rumble echoed from the main road. The sound of that tow truck on gravel was like the closing note of a long, ugly song. You could hear it half a mile away. The downshift, the metallic rattle of chains, the low diesel hum that meant somebody's day was about to get worse. Deputy Santos finished writing the citation while Linda stood in the dirt, arms crossed tight, lips trembling between fury and panic. Her phone was still clutched like a lifeline, but the performance was fading. She was not yelling anymore. She was cornered by facts and cameras. When the tow truck crested the rise, the driver slowed, eyes wide at the sight of the Mercedes. "Morning, Deputy," he called. Guess somebody had a rough commute. Santos nodded toward Linda. Mrs. Morrison's vehicle, 4 flats, property damage. You are here to recover it. The driver name tag read Miguel gave a low whistle. All 4? That is a record, Linda snapped. Just get it out of here. Miguel shrugged, backed up the flatbed, started lowering the winch. The sound of metal scraping metal made her flinch. I stood a few yards away, quiet, watching the scene like it was not real, just another long day of desert life that somehow veered off course. Santos handed me a copy of the report for signature. You are pressing charges, correct? Yes, sir. Trespass and property damage. Understood. He tore off the carbon sheet and turned to Linda. Mrs. Morrison, you are being cited for criminal trespassing. You will receive your court date within 2 weeks. You are also responsible for removing this vehicle from Mr. Webb's property at your expense. Linda's face went pale. You cannot be serious. This is ridiculous. It is a civil issue. Santos's voice stayed steady. It stopped being civil when you ignored written warnings and destroyed private property. That was the moment she broke, not dramatically, not with tears, just cracked. Her hands started shaking, voice dropping to something small. You do not understand. My husband is the HOA president. He will fix this. He will call the sheriff himself. Santos did not flinch. You are welcome to call him, but right now you are standing on someone else's land with no legal right to be here. That is what I understand. Linda dialed. The phone rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. Then she tried her lawyer. This time someone picked up. I could hear the tiny voice through the receiver. Linda, it is 6:30 inches the morning. What is going on? It is an emergency, she snapped. I am stuck. The property owner laid traps. My car is destroyed. The voice on the other end interrupted calm but curt. Linda, I told you last week. You were advised not to use that driveway. There is no valid easement. But I said we would review it. I did not tell you to keep trespassing. Do not discuss this further. We will talk in the office. Click. She just stared at her phone, like it had betrayed her. Santos finished writing the citation and handed it over. Ma'am, sign here to acknowledge receipt. It is not admission of guilt. It confirms you received the citation. Linda hesitated, then scrawled her name with a shaking hand. Her designer pen left a small ink smear where paper bent on the patrol car's hood. Miguel called out, All set, deputy. Want it towed to her place or impound? Santos looked at Linda. Your choice. Linda's voice cracked. Just take it home. That will be $720 total, Miguel said. Plus mileage if we route through Scottsdale traffic. Linda fumbled through her purse, pulled out a sleek black card, handed it over like it weighed 50 pounds. Miguel slid it into his reader. Declined, he said simply. Her face went white. Run it again. He did. Same result. Santos folded his arms. Mrs. Morrison, do you have another form of payment? Linda looked at me, not defiance, but pure disbelief, like the world had flipped upside down. You are enjoying this, are not you? I shook my head. No, ma'am. I am just relieved it is finally documented. After a pause, she pulled out another card. This one worked. Miguel handed her the receipt. She signed it quickly, avoiding everyone's eyes. When the tow truck pulled away, the Mercedes perched awkwardly on its bed. A kind of silence settled over the desert, heavy, final, strangely peaceful. Santos tore off the last page of the report and gave it to me. We will file this today. Expect follow-up from the county attorney's office. You did everything right, Marcus. Full transparency, proper warnings, no harm to the person. You have protected yourself. I nodded, exhaling. Thank you, deputy. For taking it seriously. Santos gave a small smile. Sometimes people need to learn that no trespassing is not a suggestion. Linda stood alone as patrol car lights dimmed, shoes covered in dust, hands trembling as she clutched the citation. She looked smaller than 20 minutes ago, deflated. Before Santos left, he leaned toward Linda and said softly, Ma'am, for your own sake, do not come back here again. Next time, it will not just be tires. Linda did not respond. She just stared down the road where her Mercedes had disappeared. When the last echo of the tow truck faded, I turned toward the house. The driveway was quiet again, except for faint hiss of wind through creosote bushes. For the first time in weeks, I felt the calm I had bought this land for. No engine, no horn, no arrogance cutting through peace. Still, I could not help thinking as I walked back to the porch. People like her rarely stop after being embarrassed. They double down. 2 quiet days. That is all I got before the next storm rolled in. Not on wheels this time, but on letterhead. Wednesday morning, I found a certified envelope jutting from my mailbox. Fancy navy logo, heavy paper, the kind of stationery meant to intimidate before you even open it. The return address read, Morrison Legal Group, Attorneys at Law. I poured coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened it slowly. Inside was a 7-page letter full of capital letters and legal posturing. The headline hit first, Notice of Intent to Pursue Damages, Reckless Endangerment, and Property Destruction. According to Linda's attorney, I had willfully endangered a motorist by deploying hazardous devices on an active access road, resulting in significant emotional distress and loss of property. They demanded $48,000 in damages, estimated repair costs, plus compensation for trauma and humiliation. I read it twice, then laughed once. Not joy, just disbelief. $48,000 for someone who had ignored 8 warnings, 2 certified letters, a sheriff's inspection, and 30 reflective signs the size of stop signs. I picked up the phone and called Maria. Morning, Marcus, she answered. How is peace and quiet treating you? About as quiet as a thunderstorm, I said. You are going to love this one, she listened as I read the letter aloud. Every few sentences, she made a small sound, half sigh, half chuckle. When I finished, she said, Excellent, this is actually great news. Great news? Yes, because they just handed me everything I need to win this legally. They overplayed. Maria explained how the letter's tone, the exaggerated language, the emotional distress claims, the lack of factual acknowledgement meant Linda's side was bluffing. They are fishing, she said. They are hoping you will panic and settle, but with what you have documented, they are walking into a circular saw. Then let us give them the saw, I said. We spent the next 2 hours on the phone building a counterclaim, meticulous, calm, undeniable. Maria's voice took on that steady rhythm attorneys get when they are in their zone. We will include every verifiable loss, she said. Plant damage, irrigation repairs, the destroyed gate, emotional distress for weeks of trespass. I opened my logbook and started reading her numbers. Native plantings destroyed across 4 weeks. Estimated replacement cost $1,800. Irrigation line damaged $600. Replacement signs and hardware $900. Trail camera maintenance and storage $700. Countless hours of interference, stress, disruption, legally valued at $3,000. Then came the big one, punitive damages. Maria wanted them included to send a message. When someone acts willfully and deliberately after repeated warnings, courts allow exemplary damages, she said. We will make the total $32,000 actual plus punitive. I smiled. So they started a fight over $48,000 and could end up paying more. Exactly, she replied. And because they filed first, they handed us the chance to respond with full documentation. We will attach every photo, every certified receipt, every police report, every time-stamped file. Let us drown them in their own arrogance. That night, I watched the sun sink over the mountains, the sky turning soft red gold. I was not angry anymore, just tired and ready to let paper do the fighting. 2 days later, Maria sent me a draft of the counterclaim. It was a masterpiece of calm, factual presentation. She did not use one unnecessary word. Every paragraph began with a date, a document, or a quote. On the 28th of September 2024, Defendant Morrison entered Mr. Webb's property without permission, damaging native plantings and private access. On the 15th of October 2024, despite written warnings, defendant again traversed the property, causing irrigation damage and landscape destruction. On the 4th of November 2024, defendant ignored posted warnings about deterrent devices and continued trespassing, resulting in self-inflicted vehicle damage. Weeks of my life condensed into legal language. At the end, Maria added a closing line. This matter is not one of misunderstanding, but of entitlement, the belief that rules apply only to others. The defendant's actions, willful and repetitive, left the plaintiff no choice but to defend his property through lawful, documented means. I read it twice and said, That is clear. It is also undeniable. She said, I am sending it certified to both her personal attorney and the HOA's counsel. Expect silence, the kind that means they are scrambling. She was right. A week went by. No letters, no phone calls, no black Mercedes roaring down my driveway. Instead, Roy came by one evening with a grin and a story. "You are not going to believe this," he said, leaning on the fence post. "Your little tire incident is going viral locally. Next door is full of it. Folks from Desert Ridge are calling her Tire Trap Linda." I tried not to laugh, but could not help it. "You are kidding." "Wish I was." Even the HOA board had to hold an emergency meeting. Rumor is, one of their board members, a guy named Thomas something, started asking where all the legal funds were going. That made me pause mid-sip. "Legal funds?" "Yeah," Roy said. "Word is your girl has been using HOA money to pay her lawyer." Folks are mad about it. I set the mug down, staring across dusk-lit desert. If that was true, then Linda's legal tantrum had just opened a bigger problem than she realized. Sometimes justice does not arrive with sirens or gavels. Sometimes it comes in envelopes and receipts. A week after Roy's porch talk, I started hearing the same rumor from 3 different people, which in Scottsdale usually means something big is about to happen. It began with a phone call from the county recorder's office. The woman on the other end, Jennifer, spoke with careful professionalism mixed with curiosity. "Mr. Webb," she said, "did you by chance file a formal complaint against the Desert Ridge Estates Homeowners Association?" "No, ma'am," I said. "Just Mrs. Morrison personally." She made a low sound. "Well, someone did." Anonymous tip. The county auditor just got a request to examine their books. Word is, something about misuse of community funds. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window toward the quiet driveway. "That does not surprise me," I said. "They have been financing a war that was not theirs." Jennifer chuckled softly. "That is one way to put it." After we hung up, I called Roy, and he filled in the rest. Apparently, Thomas Brennan, an HOA board member and retired CPA from Tempe, had started digging into the association's financial records. Thomas was not some busybody neighbor. He was sharp and did not like numbers that did not add up. He asked to review expense reports, Roy said, and found payments marked as legal retainers going out every month, about $9,000 a pop. "That is a lot of retainer for one trespassing case," I said. "Exactly," Roy replied. "Turns out the payments were all going to a firm in Phoenix, same one that sent you that $48,000 letter." I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. Linda had been using HOA money to fund her personal legal fight. It was one thing to trespass on someone's land. It was another to drag an entire community into it and make them pay for her arrogance. 2 days later, the story hit the Arizona Republic. HOA treasurer under audit for misuse of community funds. The headline was not dramatic, but the article underneath was significant. It named names. Linda Morrison, treasurer. Daniel Morrison, HOA president, and Thomas Brennan, board member and whistleblower. The piece quoted Thomas directly. "I began noticing irregularities when we had multiple legal disbursements listed under property boundary defense. There were no such disputes involving community property. When I traced the invoices, they led directly to legal representation for Mrs. Morrison's private case." It went on to say the HOA board had convened an emergency meeting and placed both Linda and Daniel on administrative leave pending a full forensic audit. I read the article 3 times. Not from satisfaction, but from something deeper. Validation. All I had ever wanted was for someone to call truth by its name. That weekend, the quiet community of Desert Ridge buzzed. Roy said the HOA board's email thread leaked screenshots, panicked messages from members realizing their dues had funded a personal lawsuit. Someone even posted a picture of Linda's Mercedes, still dented, still without proper tires, parked in her driveway like a monument to bad decisions. Then the audit findings came out. According to the forensic accountant's report, over the past 3 years, Linda had embezzled roughly $70,000 from HOA accounts, small withdrawals here and there, miscellaneous vendor payments to shell companies that turned out to be her personal contractors. One invoice was literally for landscape consultation, paid to a company owned by her brother in Tucson. When confronted, Daniel tried claiming he did not know. "My wife handled the finances," he told reporters, but it was too late. The board voted unanimously to remove them both. A week later, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office confirmed a criminal investigation was underway. Linda was officially under review for fraud and embezzlement. I did not gloat. I did not have to. Life was doing the arithmetic on its own. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I drove into Scottsdale for supplies and stopped at a coffee shop. The locals were buzzing. I sat at a table, ordered an Americano, and listened. "Did you hear?" one woman said. They froze her accounts. HOA is pressing charges. Guess her shopping spree finally caught up. A man across the room added, "Heard she tried blaming the board member," said Thomas. "Misinterpreted the ledgers. Can you imagine?" They all laughed. I just stirred my coffee and thought about how fast arrogance can turn into disaster. That afternoon, Maria called. "You are not going to believe this, Marcus," she said, tone somewhere between amusement and disbelief. "The HOA's new interim president just sent me an apology letter, formal, acknowledging the association was not involved in Mrs. Morrison's actions and that she misused their funds." "You are kidding," I said. "Nope, real. Signed and notarized. They even offered to mediate restitution for your damages if you were open to settling the civil side quietly." I smiled, watching wind ripple through Palo Verde trees outside my window. "I do not want their money, Maria. I just want my peace." She paused. "You already won that." She was right. For the first time in nearly 2 months, I could stand on my porch, look down that driveway, and not feel anxiety. The signs were still there, shining bright in the sun. But now they were just reminders, not warnings. Sometimes justice is not loud. It does not need a gavel or applause. Sometimes it is a quiet line drawn in the dirt, one you refuse to let anyone cross. The courthouse in Phoenix was not much to look at. A modern glass building with security checkpoints and steps worn smooth from decades of feet. I had only been there once before for a construction permit hearing. But that January morning, when I walked through the doors with Maria by my side, it felt like the final mile of a marathon I had not meant to run. Linda Morrison was already inside. I spotted her across the room, sitting at the defendant's table with a different lawyer, this time older, quieter, clearly exhausted. She looked smaller than I remembered. No designer sunglasses, no jewelry, no air of superiority, just a woman in a gray pantsuit that did not fit quite right and eyes that had not slept. The clerk read the case number, and the murmur of the courtroom fell into that strange hush that always precedes accountability. State of Arizona versus Linda Morrison. The charges: criminal trespass, property destruction, and misuse of HOA funds. The property damage and trespass were my part. The embezzlement came later from the audit. The county attorney had bundled them into a plea hearing to avoid dragging the whole community through a full trial. When the judge, a silver-haired man named Rodriguez, took his seat, everyone stood. Then it began. Linda's lawyer spoke first. His tone was careful, rehearsed, like someone trying to defuse something dangerous without touching the wrong wires. "Your Honor," he said, "my client acknowledges poor judgment in handling this matter. She believed in good faith there was an existing easement and that she was entitled to access through Mr. Webb's property. That belief, though mistaken, was not done with bad intent." I did not react. Maria did not either. We had expected that line. The prosecutor, a lean, no-nonsense woman from the county, stood next. "With respect, Your Honor, the defendant's belief was not in good faith. She was provided multiple written warnings verified by certified mail. Law enforcement informed her directly no such easement existed. Despite this, she trespassed repeatedly, destroyed private property, and caused significant losses. This was not ignorance. It was entitlement." The word hung in the air. Entitlement. That one stuck. The judge nodded slowly, flipping through a binder thick with exhibits, my photos, my letters, video stills. Every ounce of patience I had poured into paper now sat in front of him in black and white. After a pause, Judge Rodriguez spoke calm, measured, firm. "Mrs. Morrison, you have a right to defend yourself, but I have reviewed this evidence extensively. You ignored legal warnings, damaged property, and caused measurable harm. I see no confusion here. I see a pattern of disregard." Linda's lawyer whispered something to her, and she stood shaky, pale, but composed enough to read from a statement. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "Your Honor, I wish I could undo what I did. I believed I had a right to use that driveway. I was wrong. I let anger make decisions for me. I owe Mr. Webb an apology and restitution for what he lost. It was not dramatic, it was not even very emotional, but it was honest enough to make the room still for a moment." The judge nodded once, then read the ruling. Linda pleaded guilty to criminal trespass and property destruction. The embezzlement charge was being handled separately, but the plea would factor into sentencing later. She was ordered to pay $9,000 in restitution, covering the damaged gate, lost plants, irrigation repairs, and emotional distress. She received 18 months probation, a 500-foot stay-away order, and an official notation barring her from holding any HOA office for minimum 5 years. When the gavel dropped, it did not sound like punishment. It sounded like closure. Outside the courthouse, the air was crisp. The sky, that kind of brilliant blue that only happens after winter rain. Reporters were waiting, local ones with notepads and wind-blown hair. One asked if I wanted to comment. I shook my head. There was nothing left to say. The facts spoke for themselves. Maria smiled slightly. That is the beauty of paper, Marcus. It never yells, but it always remembers. We walked to her car. She looked at me, tone softening. You know, most people would have lost their temper months ago. You did not. Because anger is a fire that burns both ways, I said. I just chose to build a fence instead. She laughed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt lighter. That evening, I drove home the long way past the golf courses, past the foothills, turning green again. When I turned down my driveway, the signs were still there, shining in golden light. I slowed, rolled down the window, looked at the tire tracks, faint now, half covered by new gravel. No more Mercedes, no more trespass, just quiet. Later that night, I got a text from Roy. Heard she is selling the house. Daniel too. Whole neighborhood is buzzing. I replied simply, good. Maybe they will find somewhere with different rules and actual consequences. I sat on the porch till the stars came out. The desert was alive with night sounds, coyotes calling, owls hunting, the rustle of animals in the brush. It hit me then how strange it felt to have peace restored. Justice does not make noise. It does not come with applause or headlines. It just returns what was stolen, inch by inch, day by day, until all that is left is silence and dignity. I took a slow sip of coffee, watching night settle over the land. No horns, no trespassing, no need for spike strips, just quiet satisfaction of knowing I had done it the right way. And in the end, that was worth more than every dollar she had ever stolen.